Have you guys ever been in a hurricane before? Do you guys know how to get prepared for a hurricane? Come on, let's go. That is what you want. That's a hurricane. I don't know if y'all been keeping up with the weather lately, but there is a Category 2 hurricane. I think they said they think it's gonna get to a Category 3 hurricane in the Gulf. Looks like it's gonna make landfall in Texas, but then it's doing this really weird thing where it makes landfall and then it's like making a sharp turn and it's gonna get back into the Gulf and then head more eastward towards where we live. So, I guess we gotta do some hurricane preparedness for Hurricane Harvey.
There's two different scenarios I think that are going to happen. We will update them once the storm updates you.
Okay, so here's the deal with this hurricane. Here is Texas. And then you got Louisiana right there. The hurricane seems to be coming this way. We live right about here in South Louisiana, and we have this hurricane coming up to Corpus Christi in Texas, but then either one, it's gonna stall out and just sit here. And with a hurricane, most of the rain comes on the east side because the bands spin this way. So you're gonna get all these bands coming up here. It's gonna sit there and churn. Then the weird thing is that it's gonna kind of come back out into the Gulf, which means it could intensify, and then it's gonna come back up through Louisiana that way and dump more.
Brings it landshore up over towards Corpus Christi. Fizzles, sits, rains for days and days. Eventually, Monday, it does push out back into the Gulf of Mexico, then starts to work its way northerly.
Scenario number 2. We have Texas and Louisiana. We have said hurricane, Hurricane Harvey. It's already coming up through here. It looks like it's gonna hit Corpus Christi. And then from there, based on the other model, it'll kind of come up through here. Either way, the thing's gonna dump all kind of rain because the bands are coming this way.
This is the GFS solution, also a reliable model. This is what makes it so tricky. Our two big, most reliable models are almost at odds.
So we're gonna have to kind of watch this thing, give you an hour by hour updates with it. Couple of things that we need to be concerned about is since there's gonna be so much rain, there's a high chance of some flooding, which means our neighborhood could get, there's that coulee in our backyard, as y'all know, so that thing could get full. We'll see what happens there. I don't know if school's gonna be out, so we're gonna watch for school closures. And next weekend is Jacques' birthday party. So, if we have this thing stalling out here, then coming back into the Gulf, intensifying, and then moving up through, I don't know how long that's gonna last. It could last through the entire week if the storm stalls out long enough. So we'll just have to see what happens with this. But first, we need to get prepared for this. Do you guys know how to get prepared for a hurricane? Come on, let's go. So with a hurricane, you basically wanna make sure that you have all the essentials that you need to live for about 48 to 72 hours in case you lose power. Food, first aid, water, batteries, lights. You need some water, obviously, to drink in case your water goes out. Also, you might want to be prepared to fill your bathtub. That way, in case your water does go out, you can draw some water for that to do things like showering, to clean things and whatnot. You're gonna need some flashlights in case your power goes out as well. So make sure to grab a couple of those. Make sure you got plenty of batteries for them as well so that you can have power for them. Now, just in case there's a reason that your flashlight doesn't work or you forgot your batteries, some candles of any sort will do. Another thing with hurricane preparedness is if you have a house and the storm is hard enough, it's big enough, it's strong enough, you're gonna wanna get some plywood and ply up all of your windows. You're gonna wanna put a big piece of plywood, nail it to there, that way nothing can come through, shattering through your window. And with all that plywood up around your windows, you're not gonna have any natural light. That's why you have to have flashlights and candles. I like to have my battery bank. One, it's got a flashlight on it as well. There you go. It even has a flashing light, or it's got a SOS light as well in case you get into any sort of trouble or anything. You can always do that. Another thing about this too is that you can power up all of your electronic devices that run on some sort of USB. So like your phone or an iPad or a tablet of some sort. That way you can still be able to get the news if your cell towers haven't gone out as well. We also have a crank flashlight. So if your power goes out, you're not gonna be able to eat that much. It's good to have some canned food on hand, just in case. Rule of thumb is that you wanna have about 48 hours to 72 hours worth of things to eat per person. Last but not least, if you have any kind of medication, you wanna make sure that you get all your medicine in order, and also you might wanna have just some bandages or gauze or something like this, just in case an emergency comes up and you need these types of bandages to wrap up. Also, maybe some Tylenol or over-the-counter type of medicine you might need in case somebody gets injured in any sort of way. So other than that, if you're willing to ride it out, that's kind of the basics that you need for hurricane preparedness.
I'll tell you guys where we're going in just a minute, but I wanted to know if any of you guys have ever been in a hurricane situation before. If so, I would love to know your hurricane stories. I can still remember back in 1994, you're not gonna believe this. 1994, I was probably 13, 12 years old, and this was whenever Hurricane Andrew was coming. We're talking Category 4 hurricane. We hunkered down in my mom's room, my mom and dad's room. We, all of my brothers and sisters made pallets on the floor for that night. And we just were glued to the Weather Channel watching this. And that was probably the most intense hurricane experience that I can remember growing up as a kid. Because it was just one of those things where you just become so focused on what needs to be done and to make sure that you're doing everything right so that everyone stays safe. Because that's some of the scariest stuff, is whenever these natural disasters type of things happen, because you never know what's going to happen. All right, let's go. All right guys, so if you don't know where to get information about hurricane preparedness, then what you want to do is come down to the local library, because right in the front they usually have a whole bunch of information, and they have a packet that they put out every June, which is the start of hurricane season, that you can take, and it'll give you a better idea of what to expect, of things you need, and a tracking chart in case you want to track the thing on a map. Is what you want. Hurricane Survival Kit. All right, let's see what we have here in this Hurricane Survival Kit. Oh, here's the hurricane tracking map that I was talking to you guys about. All right, Hurricane Survival Kit right here. Let's take a look at this. Now, what I gave you earlier was just like the bare necessities. This is like a complete, absolute guide and list of everything you could need. Let's go home and take a closer look at the survival kit and see what we absolutely need and what things I think, being a Louisianan, are kind of like, nah, you don't really need that. Okay, let's take a look at this, see what we got. I need a pen. All right, I like writing in Sharpie. You know why? Because it's like the most permanent thing. That's for another vlog. We're doing pretty good. Okay, so there's just a couple of things on here that kind of stood out to me. I'll go through those real quick with you. First of all, there's this section here of papers and valuables. This is kind of for like,
if you're gonna be like out and on the run, you just wanna make sure that these things are in a safe spot. You're talking like birth certificates, social security cards, marriage license, credit cards, wills, mortgages, all that type of stuff. A couple of things that stood out for me though are fuel. You definitely wanna make sure that you have a full tank of gas, and you might wanna get one of those canisters so you can have a little bit extra. 2 reasons. 1, in case you gotta go, you can just go in your car, it's already full, you can add that gas can to it, and you can get on out of here, because if there's an evacuation that's coming, then everybody's gonna be lined up at the gas station because they're last minute people and they weren't prepared, and you're gonna have to wait in line, it's gonna take forever. Second thing about fuel is that if you have a generator, you might wanna have some fuel for that to make sure that you can keep your house generated if the power goes out. Also, keep in mind that even though you don't have a generator, your neighbor might have one, and they may be able to let you run a long extension cord at least over to like your refrigerator to be able to keep some food cold for you. So if you were to offer them some gas, I'm sure that they would be more than happy to do that for you. Another thing that stood out to me was to have a gas grill or a barbecue grill prepared, just in case if you don't have gas stoves here, like we have all electric stoves. So if the power goes out, then we don't have anything to cook on, but we could go to our barbecue pit and be able to cook some food for us. They had this section here for cleanup supplies. This is more, I think, for after the storm. You're not gonna be worried too much about cleaning during the storm. So this, not totally necessary. Another thing you may want to consider is some rain jacket or rain gear, rain boots, something like that, just to kind of keep everyone comfortable. Oh, and for all of you with kids, do not forget your children's supply of quiet toys, coloring books, crayon puzzles, books, and extra batteries, and baby supplies like diapers and milk and clothes, disposable bottles and liners, blankets, sheets, medications, a portable crib if you have to go, and some toys for them to play with. A couple of other suggestions that they have on here that I don't think are totally necessary are a portable toilet. Don't think you need that. I mean, you could just in case, but you know. And NOAA weather radio. A lot of people have cell phones these days. I can understand if you get a crank radio, but usually somebody has some kind of communications device for you, whether it's a neighbor or if you're with family. A non-cordless phone. Do people still have landlines? Okay, can somebody put a purpose to that one for me? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if there is an evacuation, a mandatory evacuation, that is definitely a sign that you want to get out of there because it is not a good situation. I don't know if y'all remember about, what, 12 years ago or so, we had Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, not far from here, and there were people who were literally up in there. Hang on, let me show you. There were literally people up in their attics because the floodwaters has gotten so high that it was coming up into the roof area. So there'd be water like up to here if we were living in New Orleans and then the flood was super bad. So they had to escape only to their attics up here. And if you're not from the South, you may not have an attic because y'all have a basement. But basically, an attic is the extra space above the house. And so what they had to do to get themselves out, hang on, let me put you guys down somewhere, was to get a hatchet or some kind of axe, emergency axe that they may have had, and literally hatchet through the ceiling, through the plywood, through all the shingles so that they could make a hole big enough that they could pull themselves through to get up on top of their roofs so that they could wave at helicopters and boats for help, because everything else was flooded underneath them. All right, let's get out of here. It's way too hot. That's another thing too, with these flooding situations. If you had to go into your attic, it's really hot in the attic. So if you're working with someone who may not be disabled, or they may not be able to climb very well, or they may not have good breathing, maybe they can't handle the heat, they're elderly, that could pose another problem as well. We're gonna be watching this storm all weekend long. It looks like we're gonna get a ton of rain. We're gonna go to the grocery store to make sure that we stock up on some groceries before the end of the day. And tomorrow we'll see what happens. Hey kiddos!
Hey.
Hey, are y'all ready for a hurricane this weekend?
No.
No? Well, it's coming.
A hurricane.
A hurricane. Let's hop in. Get buckled up.